Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair.
Welcome to the Senate Finance Committee. Today is Tuesday, March 11th. We're going to hear 11 bills today. They're all sponsor only because they were late file bills. And we're going to start today with Senator Attar, and you have as much time as you need to explain Senate Bill 1013.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Honorable Committee. My name is Dahlia Attar for the record, and I'm here in support of Senate Bill 1013. It's a Baltimore City local alcoholic beverages license extension bill. So on Falls Road, 5736 Falls Road, there's what's known to many people as the curb shop. That was the old business. That business sold and went to something called now Coppermine Cafe. They transferred the license, but according to regulation, if there are no sales within 180 days, the license expires. Coppermine Cafe has been under construction for a while, renovating the place. And during that time, they made the decision not to remain open. They did not realize the license lapsed. So what this bill does is simply extends the license for another year, so that way they can finish their construction, finish the transfer. We have a Baltimore City delegation letter in support, so I'm asking for your favorable support.
Thank you, Senator. This is your first time in our committee.
It is.
Do we have any questions for the Senator?
Everyone?
Seeing no questions, that takes care of
Thank
your
you,
business.
Madam
Thank you
Chair.
very much. Come back and see us.
Thank you.
Is Senator Folden here, or anyone representing Senator Folden? Okay. We are now going to go to Senator Gallion. Is Senator Gallion here? There he is. Senator Gallion is presenting Senate Bill 990. And Senate Bill 990 is Consumer Protection Agricultural Equipment Warranties.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and hello, committee members. I believe Senator Folden is still in AAA testifying on his bill, so I know there's a lot of moving parts here. For the record, Senator Jason Gallion here to introduce SB 990, Consumer Protection Agricultural Equipment Warranties. As you all know, purchasing a vehicle is a pretty big investment, plus the majority of us rely on our vehicle to get to work to make a living. Fortunately, we have lemon laws for our vehicles that say if we make that big investment and the car is constantly breaking down, and no matter how many times you try to fix it, it never works right, we won't be stuck with it. Senate Bill 990 would extend that lemon law to agricultural equipment. For the purposes of this bill, agricultural equipment means any self-propelled vehicle designed primarily for and used in occupation or business of farming. So think, tractors, combines. It's not the stuff that you would pull behind a tractor, which would be a regular implement. The intent of this bill is to capture the high-end farm equipment, and one example of that would be a combine, which can, go from $500,000 or more. They're pretty expensive pieces of equipment. In the amendments provided to the committee, it shows that it exempts off-road vehicles, all-terrain vehicles, equipment under 25 horsepower, lawn tractors, and mowers. Under this legislation, if agricultural equipment does not conform to all applicable warranties during the warranty period, the buyer must report the defect by providing written notice to the manufacturer or factory branch by certified mail with a return receipt requested. The defect must be corrected at no charge to the customer, regardless of whether the repairs are made after the expiration of the warranty period and within 30 days after the manufacturer's or factory dealer's receipt of the customer notification. The manufacturer will then have a reasonable number of attempts to repair or correct the issue. If they're unable to, the customer will then have two options. First option, replace the equipment with comparable equipment that is acceptable by the customer, accept return of the equipment and refund the customer. Just like a person driving their personal vehicle need that to earn a living, or think of, over-the-road truck driver. They need that to earn their living. Our farmers also need these protections so they can rely on these vehicles to earn their living. I think Farm Bureau, from their written testimony, summed it up best when they state, and I quote, "Maryland farmers rely on their equipment to maintain productive and efficient operations. When agricultural machinery fails due to manufacturer defects, it can cause significant disruptions, financial burdens, and lost productivity. Unlike other consumer goods, the stakes for farmers are high. Delays in planting, harvesting, and other critical tasks directly impact livelihoods," end quote. There are currently 10 states already that have lemon laws like this. that pertain to ag equipment. The closest one to us would be Virginia, plus 9 others. And this legislation is modeled after what was passed in those 10 other states. So I'd like to thank you for your time and ask for a favorable vote on this piece of legislation with the amendment that I mentioned.
Thank you, Senator Gallion. Do I have any questions for Senator Gallion? Seeing no questions, that ends the hearing on 990. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
I think I see Senator Folden came in. Senator Folden, would you like to come do Senate Bill 875? Consumer, let's see, 875. Public health, I can't say the word, melatonin.
Yeah, I'm gonna have a hard time
I'm gonna let
myself,
you
Madam
announce
Chair.
it.
Metobidine and xylazine, Consumer Protection Act, Madam Chair. So, Madam Chair, esteemed colleagues, and members of Finance, for the record, William Folden, State Senator for Frederick County. Before you today, I have SB 875, the Public Health Medetomidine and Xylazine Consumer Protection Act. Xylazine is used, these substances are used as veterinary tranquilizers and colloquially referred to as tranq. They are not recognized for use in humans and have a high potential for abuse, according to the FDA. In the last several years, fentanyl and other opioids have been cut, meaning these are added to xylazine and medetomidine due to their properties as a depressant. Also increases the value because it's cheap to those that are the dealers. When abused, xylazine can result in sedation, dangerously low blood pressure, depressed heart rate, unconsciousness, and necrosis, which may result in amputation or other permanent health consequences. Because xylazine and medetomidine are not opioids, naloxone does nothing to treat the potentially deadly overdose on this drug. The impact on Maryland alone, between 2012 and 2018, there were 31 recorded xylazine-related deaths. This number has jumped significantly in the past few years. 102 in 2019 alone, 344 in 2020, and the most recent is 575 in 2021 related to xylazine deaths. There were more overdose deaths in Maryland resulting from xylazine than either prescription opioids or heroin in 2022. A report issued by NIST in September of 2023 identified that medetomidine is increasingly being co-detected in samples containing fentanyl and xylazine in Maryland. What SB 875 does is it is important to emphasize that this bill only creates civil penalties, not criminal. Do you want to make them criminal or add criminal? I'm not going to fight that. But it's only a civil penalty because this is an awareness and this is a public health issue. This bill would require retailers that sell xylazine and medetomidine to obtain proof that the purchaser intends to use the product for a veterinary, institutional, or in scientific process. This bill would also prohibit sale to individuals under 21 years of age. Retailers would be required to retain a copy of the ID used to prove that the purchaser's age and documentation that it was used as proof of the purchaser's intended use. The civil penalty could be up to $3,000 for a first offense, $6,500 for a second or subsequent offense. Penalties will be remitted to the Substance Abuse Treatment Fund, which supports drug treatment courts and other drug treatment strategies to impacted communities. Other states have looked at the xylazine and have had it scheduled, meaning that it's been put, like I had a meeting and a discussion with Maryland Department of Health about having, that they need to address this and have it listed as a Schedule 1 or 2, however they would have it in the Controlled Dangerous Substances portion of the health code. Xylazine has been scheduled in or otherwise criminalized in Ohio, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and Delaware. We're seeing the increased usage in this area. Congress is considering a bipartisan bill to schedule xylazine federally. The previous White House had the Office of National Drug Center Policy declared xylazine an emerging threat last year. So with that, I would ask for your favorable report on SB 875, and I'm happy to entertain any questions you have in regards to this piece of important legislation.
Senator, do you have any amendments? HEAU is requesting some amendments. I don't know if you'd seen
Who
these.
was, Madam Chair?
HEAU.
I'm going to be honest with you, Madam Chair. I don't know if you heard or not, but I've been kind of out at the last few days. So I don't
All right.
know if I have.
I will have.
This got moved because of my surgery, so I
Yeah.
apologize for not.
No, that's okay. I'm going to have the analysts look at the amendments, and we'll get back to you and tell you what they do.
Okay.
Because I can't really
Okay.
tell from this, but we'll make sure
I
you
appreciate that.
approve them. I mean, it doesn't look like it substantially changes the bill, but we'll let you know.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Hope you feel better.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Senator? Thank you, Senator Folden.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see. Senator Benson, is she here? Is Senator Sidnor here? Okay. Senator Sidnor, do you want to present 1039?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of Finance Committee. Senate Bill 1039 would increase the cap on how much of a Class 5 brewery's taproom sales can be from beer that wasn't produced on site by the Class 5 brewery. Currently, the law allows 25% of taproom sales to come from imported beers. Senate Bill 1039 would increase the percentage to 35%. The bill would not change any of the other limitations in the law that the Class 5 brewery needs to comply with in order to sell imported beer in its taproom, including the brand owner of the beer has to be an affiliate of the Class 5 brewery, and that the imported beer has to be purchased by the Class 5 brewery from a licensed wholesaler in the state. The bill would also not change the overall cap in the amount of beer that can be sold in the taproom. I introduced this bill for Open Gate Brewery, a Class 5 brewery located within District 44. Since opening 7 years ago, Open Gate Brewery has become one of Baltimore County's largest tourist attractions and has been a good community partner over these years. Open Gate Brewery is known for the unique craft beers it brews on site. At least I'm told. For those of you who know me, I don't drink, so that's what I've been told. But it also offers the iconic Guinness Stout in the tap room and other beers that are only brewed by Guinness in Dublin. Because these beers are not brewed on site, Open Gate Brewery imports them through a local Maryland distributor, and their sale in the tap room is subject to the cap in the Class 5 statute. However, with the increasing popularity of Guinness in the market, it is becoming difficult for Open Gate Brewery to keep the taproom sales of Guinness under the current limit. The current cap of 25% was put in place 8 years ago before Open Gate Brewery opened, and Senate Bill 1039 simply asks for a modest update in the cap to 35% in order to align with customers' preference. And with that, I urge the Finance Committee to give Senate Bill 1039 a favorable report.
Senator, thank you.
Thank you.
I don't see any questions. It's a pretty easy bill.
Appreciate it.
Change 25% to 35%.
That's very simple.
Very simple. Thank you very much for your presentation. Senator Lamb, you're presenting 1036, Senator Gazzone's bill. Will you do that next, please, so you can go to your next hearing?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Senate Finance Committee. Clarence Lamb, Senator District 12, here to present SB 1036 on behalf of the Howard County delegation. This is a bill that would allow Class D license holders to have the same ability as Class A license holders in Howard County to be able to make alcohol deliveries. The Class A holders have had this ability over the last couple of years, and this is simply to extend that to Class D. Has the support of the Howard County Senate delegation, as well as a letter from the House delegation. That's all in the bill packet. That's what this bill is. Local bill.
Thank you, Senator. Is Class D tavern, is that a tavern license? Thank you. Do you have any questions for Senator Lamb? No, thank you. You can go to your other committee. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Well, let's see. I don't see Senator Benson. I don't see Senator Hayes. Senator Jackson? Oh, wait a minute. Senator Jackson was here. People are running to other committees to do their bills, so that's why we have people coming and going. Senator Jackson is? Okay. So Senator Jackson's going to present Senate Bill 1021 and Senate Bill 1023.
Good evening, or afternoon, Madam Chair. Which bill are we doing first?
You're doing Senate Bill 1021, district regulations, cemetery requirements for sale and transfer of public acquisition.
Just sit over here. All right, good afternoon, Madam Chair, fellow members of the Finance Committee. Before I start, I just wanted to say this is the first time I've been before this committee in my entire career here, so I'm really excited to be here. For the record, I am Senator Carl Jackson here in favor of SB 1021, requirements for sale or transfer of government or government acquisition. SB 1021 addresses two critical problems facing Maryland cemeteries. The first problem is the prevalence of abandoned cemeteries in the state. And let me be clear, we're not just talking about neglected cemeteries that are unsightly. We're talking about cemeteries where the owners cannot be found, where the owner is deceased, and there is no one in charge, or where there's no record of an owner at all on the SDAT real property database. Aside from total lack of maintenance of the grounds, when a cemetery is abandoned, current law does not offer a way for a municipality, county, or the state to take over the cemetery, meaning that the cemetery simply continues to degrade, with no care of any sort being given to the grounds or the burial plots. Even in instances where the dedicated volunteers, neighbors, or prison programs want to care for an abandoned cemetery, they legally cannot, as there is no way for them to obtain owner permission to do so. This bill addresses this problem by giving counties, municipalities, and the state the power, but not the obligation, to legally acquire these abandoned cemeteries and to turn them over to nonprofits that will maintain them. This addresses both the current situation with abandoned cemeteries, as well as the probability that there will be more abandoned cemeteries in the future. The second problem that this bill addresses is the sale of a cemetery for a different non-cemetery related purpose. Here we are talking about a cemetery where the owner is known, but the owner no longer wants to keep the cemetery for its intended purpose. Instead, the owner wants to sell the cemetery to build a commercial establishment such as a condo or a shopping center. However, when such a sale is considered, those buried within the cemetery grounds must be taken into account. In addition, when there is a burial at a cemetery, there is usually an understanding, some oral, sometimes written, between the deceased person's loved ones and the cemetery owner that once buried, the deceased will not be disturbed. So even though the relatives do not technically own the land, it's important for them to be consulted, to become part of the process for deciding the fate of the cemetery. Current law leaves approval for such a cemetery sale up to the court, which may or may not intervene. but does not specifically recognize the rights of the families whose loved ones are buried in the cemetery or provide any way for them to have a voice in the process. SB 1021 will correct this by giving the decision on the sale of the cemetery over to the Director of the Office of Cemetery Oversight, who would need to engage in a public process whereby public notice would be given to local communities, interested parties, and especially the loved ones of those who may be interred. This gives families a mechanism to have a voice. This gives families a mechanism to have their voices heard, and should the sale go through, to ensure that their loved ones will be disinterred and moved to a new resting place. What is most important is that this bill would make sure that the loved ones have a seat at the table and are given the opportunity to become a part of the process. I have offered an amendment to this section that would allow any party, should they disagree with the decision of the Director of the Office of Cemetery Oversight, to appeal that decision through the court system. Since this is a sponsor-only testimony, I have David Zenner, coordinator of the Maryland Cemetery Legislative Advocates, here in support and to help answer any questions you may have. I respectfully request a favorable vote for SB 1021. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Do I have any questions at all for Senator Jackson for his first time in front of our committee, his committee? Yeah. I don't, you have lots of questions, Senator Kramer?
Maybe so. Hands are popping up everywhere.
That ends the hearing on Senate Bill 1021, and now we'll go to Senate Bill 1023. Again, Senator Jackson, and you're going to present employment discrimination, fire and rescue, public safety employees' use of medical cannabis.
Yes, sir. Okay. Good afternoon, Chair Bidle, Vice Chair Hayes, and fellow members of the Senate Finance Committee. For the record, I am Senator Carl Jackson, here today in favor of SB 1023, Employment Discrimination, Fire and Rescue Public Safety Employees' Use of Medical Cannabis. This bill would prohibit an employer of fire or rescue personnel from disciplining or discharging an employee for the use of physician-approved, bless you, cannabis. Our brave fire and rescue personnel put their lives on the line daily to protect our communities, often at great personal risk. It is imperative that we provide them with the access to the medical care they need, including physician-approved cannabis treatments, without fear of employment repercussions. Firefighters endure extreme physical and psychological stress due to the nature of their work. Many suffer from chronic pain, post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and other debilitating conditions resulting from the hazards they face in the line of duty. Traditional treatment options such as opioids and other prescription medications can have dangerous side effects, including dependency, cognitive impairment, and a reduced ability to function effectively. Medical cannabis has been recognized as a safer, viable alternative that will allow firefighters to manage their symptoms while maintaining their ability to perform at the highest level. Despite proven medical benefits of cannabis, outdated employment policies continue to penalize firefighters who are unable to legally use it under a doctor's supervision. This contradiction between medical necessity and employment policies places firefighters in an untenable position, forcing them to choose between their health and their career. Such a choice is neither just nor in the best interest of public safety. It is important to remember that this bill would not prohibit employers from adopting policies or procedures that prohibit a firefighter from performing their duties while impaired by medical cannabis, or prohibit a firefighter from using medical cannabis within 12 hours before reporting for a work assignment. Protecting firefighters from unjust employment actions strengthen our emergency response system by ensuring that those who serve our community are given access to medically necessary treatment options. I have Brad
Clucas.
Clucas.
Yes, sir.
Here representing the professional firefighters of Maryland. If there are any questions, I respectfully request a favorable report. Thank you.
Senator Hayes, you have a question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It makes me a little bit nervous thinking about the job that our heroic men and women do in the fire department or whatever. I guess rounding forth, is there any scientific test that's available now that can verify if someone is actively under the influence as it relates to cannabis? I know it is for alcohol, but does such tests exist as it relates to like active influence of cannabis?
Yes, sir, it does. Mr. Vice Chair, thank you for the time. Brad Clucas with Local 2000, Howard County Fire and Rescue. That technology doesn't exist, and what that's called is cognitive impairment testing. There's a couple of different manufacturers that are leading the way with that, Druid being one of them. The most important part with regard to being under the influence is that this is regarded, you mentioned alcohol being a wonderful example of understanding under the influence. But with regard to any prescription medication, there isn't a way to use biometric testing, meaning urine, oral fluids, hair, anything like that, to confirm whether somebody's under the influence or not. Right. So that firefighter could be under the influence of Ambien or Adderall or one of these other medication that would inhibit their cognitive impairment, and there's no scientific testing to verify whether they are under the influence or not. So what we rely on in the fire service is our judgment as to whether that person is fit for duty or not. That's the overall judgment that we make, and that's something that we make every day on calls, whether someone can make medical decisions for themselves and judge that. So we're excellent judges as to impairment for somebody.
Right. So the test that you're referring to, the cognitive impairment testing.
Yes, sir.
There's no way to decipher in the results of that testing whether it's Ambien or cannabis or whatever.
No, sir. Those testings would just judge impairment in general.
Impairment. Okay.
So if there was polypharm impairment, sleep deprivation, things like that, those would also tip somebody off. We've suggested in other realms locally to the department maybe go to that to judge whether somebody's fit for duty. When it comes to substance abuse, that is mainly an indicative of somebody having mental health issues. Mm-hmm. So at that point in time where you like to decipher is as to whether this is a medical condition that is impairing their capabilities or whether this is a substance issue. Mm-hmm. So in no different than if somebody had 104 fever, they would be impaired enough that you wouldn't want them riding on the ladder truck next to you. So cognitive impairment is just based off of whether you are impaired enough to do the job or not.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Senator Hershey?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brad, just on that same line of questioning, first of all, there's no difference really between medical cannabis and recreational cannabis, right?
If you're talking about the cannabis specifically, right. No. There's regulations on the amount that you can purchase and,
whether you pay tax on it or not, or those kind of things. But there's no difference in the product themselves.
No, sir.
Correct. Okay. So let's kind of move this out into the real world that this has been implemented. Is this something that a firefighter or EMS technician would have to be proactive in showing their chain of command that, hey, I have a written certification that I am allowed to be prescribed or take medical cannabis?
I think what that would be important with is how that the individual county substance abuse policy works. I can speak on behalf of Howard County, and how that would work is you would work with our occupational health specialist. And if you were prescribed any medication that's on the Controlled Substances Act or anything that you could be tested for that would cognitively impair you, you would provide them with that prescription. In the case you do go up for a urinalysis, that prescription by the occupational health doctor would be confirmed with the prescribing doctor to make sure it's still current, that your prescription hasn't changed, and things like that. So you would have it on file prior to testing.
So that's what I would call more proactive.
Yes,
right?
sir.
So this is in place. But you say that's county by county?
I'm just saying how they incorporate that. So let's say I got prescribed last night, I had an injury and they prescribed me an opioid.
Right.
I wouldn't have time to provide that and I'd go to work the next day. So if you need an opioid to go to sleep, you're permitted to use those medications if they're prescribed, so long as you're not under the impairment while you're on duty. So I would have to, if I had a urinalysis that next day and I hadn't yet provided to the occupational health specialist doctor, they would call you and when you got the results that you had failed your urinalysis or whatever form of testing, and then you would be required to provide them with that prescription.
Okay. Opioids may be a little tougher to get that prescription. I mean, I think a physician would really have to see that that was necessary. Medical cannabis licenses, the registration might be a little bit easier, although I know we went through painstaking debate on making sure that medical cannabis was prescribed in the appropriate way. I just want to make sure that this is not a reactive excuse for getting, caught in a urinalysis where you show the signs of cannabis, you get caught, and then you come up with a doctor prescribed sort of information to give you access to medical cannabis.
So, pardon me if you already know the way that things work with acquiring a medical cannabis card, but you have to go to your doctor and you have to get diagnosed with.
I remember again very well what we went through and what's on paper, but.
Then I don't want to go into the
I know
meat
what's
potatoes
I know
of
what's in the
that.
law, but I'm not
But-
saying that that's been implemented accurately as well too. But okay, go ahead.
An easy answer to that would be if your prescription date is after the time of your urinalysis, that wouldn't be a valid excuse
Correct.
for
Right.
failing your urinalysis.
Right.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. But I do want to at least make sure that that's what we are seeing on more of a proactive approach, the way that you described it at first. So,
Absolutely. And
okay.
we wouldn't be advocating, this is what we love to do, is to provide this service for our citizens. And
Right.
for me, it's the county that I was born and raised in and that my parents still live in. And
Right.
I would never advocate for something that would compromise the safety of the people that we serve.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. So,
Yes, sir.
And thank you very much. Thank you both. Thank you.
Senator, I don't see any other questions. Thank you very much, Senator Jackson, for the bill.
Thank you.
Senator Benson is here, I think. Senator Benson gets to spend part of her birthday with us.
It's my 48th birthday.
Senator Benson, you're going to present us Senate Bill 1005, which is Federally Qualified Health Centers Grant Program, Acquisition of Land.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Bidle, Vice Chair Hayes, and esteemed committee members. I come before you today to express my unwavering support for Senate Bill 1005. This critical legislation authorizes the Board of Public Works, on the recommendation of the Secretary of Health, to make grants unto the Federal Qualified Health Centers Grant Program for the acquisition of land for the construction of a used Federal Qualified House Center. Federally qualified house centers are essential to the well-being of our most underserved population. They provide comprehensive, high-quality health care services to individuals and families who might otherwise go without essential medical care. By expanding the scope of the Federally Qualified Health Center program to include the acquisition of land, Senate Bill 1005 will make a transformative impact on the healthcare landscape of our state. The urgency of this legislation cannot be overstated. Number one, critical access to health care. The expansion of the federally qualified health centers will ensure that more Maryland residents regardless of socioeconomic status, have access to affordable and comprehensive health care services. This is not merely a health care issue. It is a fundamental matter of equity and justice. Number 2, economic revitalization. The establishment of new health centers will create jobs, stimulate local economies, and breathe new life into communities. The economic upliftment will benefit businesses and residents alike, fostering a cycle of growth and prosperity. Number 3, addressing healthcare disparities. By promoting healthcare equity, Senate Bill 1005 will help bridge the gap in healthcare access for marginalized and underserved communities. It is our moral obligation to ensure that every resident has access to the health care they need and deserve. Number 4, preventive care and cost savings. FQHC focus on preventive care and managing chronic diseases, which significantly improves health outcomes and reduces long-term health care costs. Expanding FQHCs will create a healthier and more resilient population. This legislation is not just a policy change. It is a bold and necessary investment in the health and well-being of our communities. It represents an opportunity to address critical gaps in our healthcare system and to reaffirm our commitment to the principles of equity, justice, and human dignity. In conclusion, I passively urge a favorable vote to Senate Bill 1005 from the members of the Finance Committee. This legislation is a profound commitment to build a healthier, more equitable future for all Maryland residents. Thank you for your attention and consideration.
Thank you, Senator, for this good bill. I don't see any questions.
So happy birthday.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Appreciate it.
That ends the hearing on Senate Bill 1005. Senator Mouths, do you want to do Senate Bill 1025?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I see my John Bang Bear is here. For those of you who don't know, I was his school principal.
You did a good job.
I think so.
I have my concerns.
Senator Mouths, you're presenting.
Smart then and very smart now.
Voice and visual likeness. I'm giving it up. I can't. When you get that age, you're doing so. Ready, Senator Mounts?
Yes, Madam Chair and colleagues, it's an honor to present Senate Bill 1025 this afternoon. I have no witnesses. This was a late file bill, and it's a late file concept. It's an idea that's just growing in states around the country. It's something that's being discussed at the federal level, but Senate Bill 1025 creates a right of publicity, and a right of publicity stems off of what most people commonly would think of as an intellectual property right. This would create a state-based right of publicity, and that right of publicity is founded in the name, image, and likeness of any individual. Now, unfortunately, some of the best intentions bring about unintended consequences. And I've noticed in our witness file that we have a pile of opposition testimony and not a lot of supporting testimony. So point being taken, this legislation is intended to protect that name, image, likeness right through a right of publicity by establishing a state law. Some states already recognize this through common law. However, for purposes of this hearing, seeing that there is so much opposition and not so much support, I don't want to take up too much of the committee's time, other than, for the record, there is comment from the Motion Picture Association, where they're concerned about this would allow a citizen from any state to be able to enjoy the benefits of this law should it be enacted. And I would gladly accept a change or an amendment to the bill that would limit it to a Maryland resident, someone domiciled in Maryland. But for purposes of moving forward, I think the future on this legislation looks a little dark right now, and it may come back next year. But for concluding my testimony as sponsor only, I appreciate your attention, and I hope that you will give this legislation your kindest appreciation come voting time. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Do we have any questions for Senator Mounts? I don't see any questions. Thank you, Senator. Senator Hayes, Vice Chair Hayes, Senate Bill 1008, Economic Development Small Business Guarantee Fund alterations.
Come on up, Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of Senate Finance. I'm joined here at the podium with Tim Smoot, who will be here only to provide any answers to technical questions. I come to you to present Senate Bill 1008, Economic Development Small Businesses. I'm Senator Antonio Hayes, representing the Fighting 40th District, and to express my strong support for 1008. This legislation strengthens the Small Business Guarantee Fund, improving access to capital for Maryland small businesses by expanding the financial instruments available for loan guarantees and reinforcing lender confidence. Senate Bill 1008 is a priority legislative by caucus and represents a strategic investment in economic growth. Madam Chair and colleagues, the House has amended this bill to strike whatever language that refers to the full faith and credit of the state of Maryland. I wish to adopt that same posture should the committee see fit for this bill to go forward. In the meantime, should we decide to proceed in that manner, this bill expands the financial instruments for loan guarantees. It authorizes the use of irrevocable letters of credit, escrow accounts, and official treasurer's checks as security. It also provides greater flexibility for small businesses seeking financial options. Lastly, it promotes small business growth and economic development. This empowers entrepreneurs by making capital more accessible, encourages job creation and business expansion in Maryland, and also strengthens underserved communities by ensuring small businesses have the resources to succeed. Small businesses are the backbone of Maryland's economy, yet many struggle to access capital. The Small Business Guarantee Fund is a lifeline for businesses that face barriers to traditional financing. By enhancing financial security and expanding funding options, Senate Bill 1008 ensures Maryland's commitment to small business success. Senate Bill 1008 is a crucial investment in Maryland's small business community. I urge my esteemed colleagues in the Senate Finance Committee to issue a favorable report for Senate Bill 1008 with amendment.
Any questions at all for our good Vice Chair? I see no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam
I
Chair.
think that brings me, right?
You did well in your testimony. Thank you.
Senator Hayes, you're going to.
I'm sorry. My apologies.
I'm going to have the Commissioner of Financial Regulation at the table.
Excellent. So next we're calling Senate Bill 1026, which with the sponsor, Chair Beidel, who will have the Commissioner of Financial Affairs from Department of Labor with her.
Thank you, Vice Chair Hayes and members of the Finance Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to present Senate Bill 1026. This is a late file bill because there was a late court ruling, and so it took a little bit to get the bill figured out and be able to bring it to you. So I appreciate you hearing the late file bill. It is also an emergency bill to restore the stability to the mortgage market in our great state. Failure to pass this bill risks continued disruption of the state's mortgage and other scrutinized loan markets. We've been told that 6 mortgage companies are no longer doing business in the state at this point. unless we pass this bill. So the recent legal decision was the estate of Brown versus Ward, held that the secondary mortgage market purchasers of loans, that is, trust and other loan securitization vehicles, must obtain licenses when previously there had been no need. This bill will return the market to the position in which it existed prior to the Brown decision. Specifically, it exempts from licensure the special purpose trust used to facilitate the mortgage and other consumer loan markets. So a passive trust simply holds the mortgages. It cannot foreclose. The foreclosure is done by the servicing company, which is a licensed company and is overseen by our financial regulation department. Trust cannot foreclose, but that's what the actual lawsuit was about. Trusts covered by this bill obtain their loans from licensed lenders and utilize licensed loan servicers. These trusts and other special purpose entities are often passive and transient, meaning there is no person to assign a license to, or activity is carried out through licensed loan servicers. The ruling forced lenders to make difficult choices, and some have stopped offering certain loan products. The vast majority of mortgage loans originated in Maryland, like in the rest of the country, are sold on the secondary market and pooled into residential mortgage-backed securities. Roughly 25 to 35% of Maryland loans are pooled and sold outside the government-sponsored entities, GSEs, such as Fannie Mae and Ginnie Mae. The Brown decision created uncertainty for these transactions, resulting in reduced mortgage availability for Maryland borrowers. Left unaddressed, this situation will harm Maryland homeowners and our state's economy. Mortgage lending is highly competitive, and lenders are not obligated to operate in any single state. If regulatory burdens here become too complex or costly, they can and will choose to do business elsewhere. We're already seeing signs of market contraction, which could result in fewer loan options, higher cost, and a less competitive mortgage landscape. OFR, Office of Financial Responsibility, right? Regulation, took immediate action following the decision to provide clarity and issued interpretive guidance in January, temporarily delaying enforcement of the new licensing requirement until July of 2025. The delay was intended to allow time for the General Assembly to act, and this bill is the necessary legislative remedy. Senate Bill 1026 is a targeted and practical solution that does not reduce consumer protections. Lenders and servicers will remain subject to robust licensing, oversight, and enforcement by OFR to ensure fair lending practices. This bill simply reaffirms the regulatory approach that has been in place prior to the Brown decision, ensuring passive trusts do not require licensure when maintaining the strong consumer protections Maryland borrowers deserve. Additionally, this legislation provides for the establishment of a licensing study group to meet over the summer of 2025. This group will review Maryland's licensing framework and make recommendations to ensure we continue to strike the right balance between consumer protection and market competition. If the General Assembly does not pass this legislation, OFR will be forced to license and examine thousands of passive trust and entities, a massive and unprecedented burden on its regulatory system. This is not a sustainable path forward, nor is it in the best interest of Maryland borrowers. And for all these reasons, I respectfully request a favorable report on Senate Bill 1026.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for your testimony and the splendid testimony from OFR. Are there any questions for this panel? Seeing none, thank you so very much. This ends the hearing on Senate Bill 1026. Oh, wow. Unfortunately, ma'am, we only allow testimony from those who are signed up. There will be an opportunity. I would suggest that you reach out to the chair through email or something like that. I'm pretty sure she or any member of the committee would be more than anxious to answer those questions. But at this time, this not only concludes the bill hearing for Senate Bill 1026, this also concludes our bill hearings for today. Committee members, please stand by. In a couple of minutes, we'll go into a voting session. No, ma'am. In this case, it's sorry.